Thank you once again for joining us. This is Report Desk Africa on News Central Television. And we kick off today's show with what probably is the hottest topic on the continent. And of course, that is the Sudan crisis. But looking at it from another angle. Now, the first group of Nigerian evacuees from Sudan finally arrived in Abuja yesterday after several days stranded at the border with Egypt. Now, the evacuees arrived in aircrafts owned by Nigeria's Airforce, that's the NAF, which conveyed the evacuees from Aswan in Egypt to Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, Nigeria's capital. Now, we hear that while Air Peace, a private commercial airliner, conveyed about 282 evacuees, the Nigerian Air Force conveyed 96 evacuees, according to the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, that's talking about Sadiya Farouq, while addressing the press. Let's take a quick look at some of the images you are seeing on your screen already. Are images of the evacuees as they arrived at the airport in Abuja. The total number that we gave you earlier. It has been quite a tough one for them eventually. But we're glad that these evacuees have landed the country eventually.
Well, thankfully, they have landed the country. I mean, we remember talking about this issue for a long time. And, we're trying to understand why those kind of problems will even arise. There was the issue of non-payment, and then the students were stranded in the desert. We couldn't get, the last time we had on this program, we couldn't exactly get the students to talk to us. But, I mean, some of the reports that we're seeing, some of the videos that were making the rounds on social media indicated that these students were stranded in the desert. But anyways, we'll have more on this. Let's just take a look at this clip and then we'll talk about it.
Bullets pass through our heads. We lay down at our own homes. We have to lay down at the ground. We can't even sit down because the noise, even the noise, is very bad to hear, except to see it by your own true eyes.
I've never experienced this kind of situation, and it is in period of Ramadan. We are fasting, no food, no water, and there is gunshot across. I witnessed with my eyes the gunshot across our room.
The two batches are coming in, one by the Nigerian Air Force, about 90 of the Nigerian Air Force, but estimate of everybody on flight is about 350, so 90 on C-130 and the remaining on Air Peace.
Well, that was the one of many clips that we're able to get from, the return and touchdown of the citizens that were evacuated from Sudan. Now, prior to that, there were lots of information flying around. There was a time that people were saying a group of persons from a different region were not allowed, to be brought in with the buses. But eventually, Akede Dabirewa, who you saw, the chairman of the NICOM, debunked that news. But then there were also some stories that seemed to be true, stories like the number of people who were to be evacuated were more than the buses and, were more than the planes that were available to carry them. And that brought the question, do they not have a proper documentation of the number of people who are in Sudan? And if not, why not? So these are the questions that we will be looking for answers to. And that's why joining us to discuss this is the man who was at the airport when the students and citizens landed. And that's our correspondent, Amadin. Amadin, thank you for joining us. Amadin, can you confirm you can hear us, please?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Amadin, you were at the evacuation, or rather at the site of a touchdown, when the students and the citizens landed. Can you give us more information about how it went?
Okay, actually, I was not at the airport as they landed, but we have been following events prior to the evacuation of Nigerians from Sudan. First of all, you have to really understand the context and have a proper understanding of the terrain of Sudan to really understand the entire evacuation process. First of all, Sudan is the largest country in Africa by landmass, which borders almost 7 African countries. Now, you have Ethiopia, you have Egypt, you have Saudi Arabia, and several other countries. So, but when you look at the number of Nigerians in Sudan, estimates say there are over 3 million Nigerians in Sudan, because Sudan being a very old African country, it was part of the route of the Trans-Sahara slave trade. It was also the route for early pilgrimage to Mecca earlier, many hundreds of years ago. So many Nigerians that traversed that route, automatically some of them sought permanent abode in Sudan. Some of them have been there for generations, still claiming Nigeria as their country of origin. But they have never been, their children have never been back to Nigeria. So when the crisis happened between Nigeria and Sudan, a certain number of registered Nigerians willing to come back to the country. As of last week, about 5,500 Nigerians had indicated interest that they will be coming, but they are willing to be coming back to the country. But the problem now government had on its hands is that Sudan, like I said, is a very large country. The exact government had to identify the exact border crossing that Nigerians would face. You had the Sudan-Ethiopian border, you had the Sudan Egyptian border, you had Sudan Wadi al-Halfa, then the border point was Akede, and at the other side, you had the Egyptian city, and then you had the port of Sudan, which is separated just by the Red Sea, just by the sea. So what you have is that there were many Nigerians willing to go to different border crosses and different points. And considering the fact that a lot of Nigerians, especially Nigerians from northern extraction, Sudan was also a choice destination for tertiary education for a lot of their wards. A lot of the students who were there were in danger as the conflict escalated between the Sudan army and the rapid support forces. So what government did last week was try to get to the Nigerian community and try to see how they could begin to evacuate Nigerians to the border point. But you also understand that the countries in the north of Africa, a lot of them have their own specific immigration criteria, not like Nigeria's immigration criteria. And so they were insisting that if Nigerians had appeared at the border point, they had to obey their immigration rules to the letter. So what the federal government did was that as of last week, the federal government released the tranche of about $1.2 million to evacuate Nigerians to the border at Egypt, because the Wadi al-Halfa and Akede was the border point. But what government did was that they paid a tranche of payment. They paid about $400,000 for about 30 buses. So when they tried to transact with bus companies, and they were hoping that what they paid was an advance, but the bus companies said no, that they were going to charge the full rate for the buses. That was why government could not get the exact number of buses into Khartoum to get the entire students to the border point. At some point, the bus driver said no, that Nigerian government must meet up the $1.2 million. That was why they had that issue when the buses stopped at the middle of the desert, hoping that Nigerian government would effect the payment, because remember, it was a crisis, it is a war situation, and they wanted guarantees for their money.
Okay, Amadin, I'd like to quickly butt in here. Now, you mentioned earlier, you talked about immigration criteria, across several countries that border Sudan. One of such countries, and of course the country that Nigeria and many other countries got their nationals through, was Egypt. Now, sometime along the line, we heard that some Egyptian authorities refused entry of Nigerian students. Is this a sign of, some kind of strange relationship between Nigeria and Egypt? Or was it that this happened not just to Nigerian students or Nigerian immigrants, but to other nationals that were trying to get out of Sudan via Egypt?
No, the information we got was that as of the buses that picked students from Khartoum to Akede, the Akede border, were about 615, and the Egyptian authorities, based on their immigration rules, first of all, you have to pay a certain fee of about $7 for each of them. And by the time the buses are taking the students to the border crossing, there was no Nigerian official as of that time So after paying the $7 fee per each student, you also have to give them a visa. They insisted that they will not allow any Nigerian into their country unless their visas were approved. But what the Nigerian authorities did from the Nigerian consulate in Egypt, when they got to the border, they had to appeal to the Egyptian authorities that the students were not just going to stay inside Egypt. They were only on transit to the airport. From there, they will be airlifted back to the country. But following intervention from Nigeria's foreign ministry and also from the presidency, the Egyptian authorities had to compel the consulate officials to sign an undertaking that the moment they allow them into Egypt, they move them straight to the airport.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Amadin. I mean, looking at the whole situation, we've seen a lot of, I wouldn't say inconsistencies, because some of that has been clarified, but a lot of times you see that these kind of happenings set a precedent for fear, Bernard. When you see that these kind of things are happening, you know, I mentioned last week that if such a thing is happening and people are scared, because of course these people in Sudan have families here in Nigeria, and the families were hopeful that they were going to come back on time, but because of all the ups and downs, the problems they were facing, it just makes other people in diaspora scared. You know, it's not like we're expecting bad occurrences or something like that, but if these kind of things are not tackled immediately, what's to say that they will handle the next one to come?
As a matter of fact, very, very true. I remember in 2019, or was it 2020, when they were also returnees from Libya. I was at the airport in Lagos here, and what you have mentioned now, some of the fears that people also had. Now, one major challenge that the Nigerian Commission, NIDCOM, claimed that they had were logistic challenges, and this is a very generic word that always is being used. Of course, we have to give kudos to NIDCOM for the efforts, and the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs that are put in place. But of course, there are those who are asking that these efforts could have come in earlier. We see other countries who were able to do that earlier and were able to bring their own evacuees into their country earlier than the way Nigeria did.
And you know, one would think that these problems will be addressed, seeing how the first time that was a problem. You would think that people would want to work on that problem, improve on that, so that next time we wouldn't be having logistics challenge. Remember, there was also the issue of Ukraine.
Russia-Ukraine, exactly.
Yeah, it was almost the same challenge. So how long are we going to keep having logistics challenges? But anyways, Amadin, thank you for still staying with us. Now that we have the returnees back, what are the rehabilitation plans for them? I mean, when they came, they announced that they were going to give each one of them, I think, 100,000 naira to get settled. And then I think a network provider also offered to give them free data. But beyond that, what are the rehabilitation plans for them?
Okay, first of all, we have to admit that these are Nigerian citizens, most of them students. It was not like they had committed crime of any sort in Sudan or were serving various jail terms. They were only causing unfortunate conflict between unfortunate crisis happening in Sudan and Khartoum. So what government did, what the committee saddled with the responsibility of evacuating them back to Nigeria, what they said they put in place was that, considering the fact that some of them have had to travel hours of journey, between 6 to 12 hours, at the point of boarding, the Air Force plane which had gone to evacuate them, the C-130, had gone with medical personnel, medicine, and also some foodstuff. But but there was no plan, no arrangement made to rehabilitate any of them when they come to Nigeria, because they were virtually not sick or virtually not being removed from prison. All they needed to do was transport to their various states and to back to the comfort of their families. But one point I also know, the evacuation is not only being carried out by the federal government. Also, some state governments that send students on scholarship to Sudan, some of them were making their own arrangements. As of 3:30 today, we confirmed that there was an Aswan aircraft that had departed Nigeria to Aswan Airport in Egypt, hoping to bring them back. And just like 30 minutes ago, I have confirmed that about 95 students had been cleared from Borno State. We also got information that Kaduna and Jigawa also had sent buses to evacuate their own students from Khartoum. So these arrangements are going on. So what the government has been trying to do is get them back to the country and let them go back to their families. But any other plan as per rehabilitation, that has not been part of the plans and arrangements of the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs.
All right, thank you so much, Amadin. We want to thank you and your team for staying on top of this story, and we do know and we believe that for further information coming out of Sudan and of course other Nigerian evacuees that we hope will be brought back, we know that you will feed us with more information. Thank you so much once again, Amadin.
Thank you, Bernard.